We often picture spiritual enlightenment as this epic marathon, right? Something that takes a whole lifetime of grinding and effort. But what if that whole idea is just wrong? In this explainer, we're going to dive into a single, incredibly powerful piece of text that flips that entire assumption on its head. It suggests that realization, it can happen in a flash.
I mean, this is the big question, isn't it? Let's be real. When you hear the word enlightenment, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's these images of, ancient sages on a mountaintop, or monks who've given up everything, or scholars buried in books. It just feels so out of reach, almost like it's reserved for a special club that we're not a part of.
And that's exactly why it feels that way. We've basically built this giant wall of requirements in our minds. It's like this impossible checklist. You have to study for years, you got to purify a whole lifetime of karma, you need to be a super scholar, and you have to practice for decades. It's just completely daunting.
But then you come across something like this. Just a short, really simple exchange from our source text. It doesn't look like much at first glance, but I'm telling you, these few lines are like a wrecking ball. They hold a message so radical, it's about to smash right through that wall we were just talking about.
So the whole thing kicks off with this question, and you can just feel the disbelief in it. It goes right for one of the biggest hurdles people think of, karma. The idea that all our past actions have built up this spiritual debt, right? Something we have to spend our lives paying off. This question basically says, wait a minute, you're telling me this is possible even with all that baggage? It assumes karma is a total deal breaker. So what's the answer? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The text doesn't offer some clever workaround or a secret technique. Nope, it completely reframes the entire problem. And boom, here's the first part of this just stunning answer. The text doesn't stop at karma. It goes even further and just waves away another huge barrier, knowledge. It says realization is possible even if someone is illiterate. Think about that for a second. That is absolutely revolutionary. It's not just saying that all those years of study are less important. It's suggesting they might not be required at all. Okay, so this really lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have what we all tend to believe, the things that act like gatekeepers. You've got to be super knowledgeable, you've got to have your karma all sorted out. But then on the other side, you have this radical answer from the text, possible even if you're illiterate, and possible even with karmas. The two biggest roadblocks, just gone. Which leads to the obvious next question, right? You're probably thinking, how is that even possible? If it's not about what you know and it's not about what you've done, then what in the world is it about? How can these things we thought were the absolute foundation of the spiritual journey just not matter? And that brings us to the absolute core of this teaching. The whole answer, the key that unlocks this entire incredible idea. It all comes down to one single, profound word. Because he himself is that. That's it. That's the whole answer. See, realization isn't blocked by your karma or how many books you've read, because it's not some prize you have to win. It's simply the recognition of what you already are. It's not something you earn, it's something you realize. So what on earth is that? Well, in this context, that is talking about the ultimate, unchanging reality. It's your true nature, the core of who you are. And this is so, so important. It completely reframes the goal. Enlightenment isn't some faraway place you have to journey to. It's more like it's your home address. You're already there. You've just forgotten where you live.
Let me put it another way. We usually think of the spiritual path as a process of becoming. Right? Becoming better, becoming more pure, becoming more knowledgeable, becoming enlightened. This text just totally flips that script. It says the whole point is to stop trying to become and simply recognize your own being. It's a shift in how you see things, not a change in who you fundamentally are.
Okay, so if realization is just about recognizing what you already are, what does that do to the timeline? What about all those decades of practice we thought were non-negotiable? This is the map most of us have in our heads, a long, hard road. You study for years, then you meditate for a decade, then you work on your karma for another decade, and maybe, just maybe, after 40 years, you get there. It's the slow, painful climb up a huge mountain, and the goal is way, way off in the future. But then, the source text takes that map and just rips it to shreds with one last line. One can realize in a trice. In a trice. What does that mean? It means in an instant, in a flash. Not in 40 years, not in a lifetime, but right now. Just one. One single instant. That's all it takes for that massive shift in perception. What this text is really saying is that the gap between ignorance and realization, it isn't a long road you have to travel. It's more like a thin veil that just needs to be lifted in one single moment. So here we are. After tearing down every single one of those external requirements we started with, the text leaves us hanging with one last, really provocative question. If it's not your knowledge, not your karma, and not time, then what is the barrier? What's preventing that realization? Right here, in this very moment. Now that is something to think about.